Well, today here on our YouTube channel, we have a follow-up video, and we're back with Dr. Harley Naumann talking about Sunn Hemp, but we also have the University of Missouri Beef Farm Manager, Dale Riley, and the Assistant Beef Farm Manager, Logan Billingsley, because they have not only harvested but also fed the Sunn Hemp, and they can give us some great insights about the management, harvest and post-harvest. But Harley, you've got some Sunn Hemp forage analysis back now that you may want to share with us first.
Yeah, sure. So I know we were waiting on that information last time we talked, and so based on the analysis that we sent off, the hay probes that we collected from the Sunn Hemp hay demonstration, give you just a couple of tidbits here. This was again 55 days after planting was the maturity on it. It had started to flower. Maybe a little bit longer than what we had initially desired there, but still made some decent feed. The crude protein on it was 11.7%. NDF was 61%, and ADF was 49.5% of the dry matter. And actually, I got to look, and I was curious about those numbers. And I went back to previous studies that we've conducted with Sunn Hemp over the years, and went back and looked at some other nutritive value analyses at the same stage of maturity. Actually lined up just right. They were the same basically. So from 2014 to this material that we harvested last year, at 55 days after planting, that's basically what we got.
And this at 55 days, you really would rather been at 45 days as far as quality goes.
Yeah, for sure. If you're wanting to push the nutritive value up there a little bit, then definitely 45 days gives us a greater nutritive value. Just to give you some examples, we get, at 45 days, looking at some of our previous studies, we're north of 12% on protein. Our NDF is closer to 50%.
Wow.
ADF closer to 40%.
So really a lot of fiber accumulation in those next 10 days.
That's right.
And did you break apart some of that between leaf and stem?
Oh, we did. Sure. We've got leaf and stem contributions as well from prior studies. The leaves are where the bulk of the protein is at, of course. If we start to look at leaves, what's really interesting about them is from whether it's 35 days after planting or 55 days after planting, the nutritive value of the leaf material is very stable. We're looking at 35 days after planting, the leaves having 26% crude protein.
Oh my God! No, that's better than alfalfa. Or
in some situations, maybe, yeah, right.
Bulk alfalfa hay would be what, 20% at the most, 18 to 20 at the most.
Probably pretty typical. Again, depends on where you're growing and a lot of factors.
Dale growing it.
There you go. But no, so 35 days after planting, we had 26.4% protein. If you took it out to 55 days after planting, it was 26.6% protein. So really no change, right? Pretty stable. In the leaf material, the stems drive the decline in nutritive value, as you mentioned. And so if we look at stem material, we compare 35 and 55 days. 35 days, we had 12% protein in the stem, 12.3. And then at 55 days, we were down to 9% protein, almost 10, but 9.9. And the fiber on those is pretty interesting too. I mean, the NDFs on leaves at 35 days after planting, 25% NDF. At 55, 27% NDF. So again, leaves are very stable, and that we find that across just about all legumes, right? That's just typical, typical there. But the stems, you see a lot of changes, right? If you're looking at NDF again, 35 days after planting, 58.5% NDF. At 55 days after planting, you're up to 66%. So you're really, the stem with maturity is really driving the increase in the fiber content of this plant.
And probably the lignin would be going up too.
It would be, for sure. If you want to look at the digestibility of the NDF, we collect that as well. What's pretty interesting is, again, with leaves, the NDF digestibility or fiber digestibility, very stable at around 60, probably average 67%. Digestibility, you look at the stems, when it's early in its maturity, we're looking at about 44% digestible NDF, and then NDF digestibility, and then when you get out to 55 days after planting, it's down to 37.5% NDF digestibility.
So you can really manage the Sunn Hemp. Of course, weather becomes a factor, just like any hay production, to get what you want. Do you want a lot of bulk, or if you want more high quality?
For sure, yeah. And we've collected a lot of data since 2014 on all of these things. We can pretty well predict what you're going to be, what you can expect from a nutritive value standpoint at almost any day that you would harvest from 35 days out to 55 or even 60 days after you've planted it.
And what you harvested this past year at 55 days, what's that comparable to? I mean, what would you compare with just a tall fescue grazing, or would you maybe a pearl millet or a sorghum? How would they compare to this?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure I can answer that very accurately, but probably still, it's certainly better than equivalent maturity tall fescue, for example, right? So where tall fescue's flowered, started, and headed out, not going to be quite as high nutritive value as this material.
And also, like even our warm season grasses won't be, unless it's fertilized. That's another thing. You didn't put any nitrogen fertilizer to get that crude protein to get this. No,
right. This is all based, any of the nitrogen values that we see are based on nitrogen fixation.
Right. If I got my grass up to that high, I'd have had to put quite a bit of fertilizer on it to get that added cost.
Yeah, that's probably right.
To get any kind of volume of yield.
Right.
On the top of that.
Well, certainly to match that, you wouldn't match the yield that we got.
Right. At 4.4 dry tons per acre.
Right.
Now, shift a little bit to Dale and to Logan. You all are the one that harvested it and fed it in a couple of different ways. Now, you mentioned to me that 55 day was about 6 to 7 foot tall. How was that working with it?
When we harvested it really, using the disc bind and everything, we didn't really have too many issues as far as being able to harvest it and get it cut. But it started to flower, and it was anywhere in between that 6 to 7 foot tall range. And it was a pretty thick stand too. But as far as being able to get it on the ground, we really didn't have too many issues.
Well, how about wrapping it up?
We found out that it's a little harder to dry out at that age, and basically when we're looking in September, again, weather issues, if we had a little more moisture, it took a little more dry time. And rolling it up sometimes with that length or that height, we would pull in more. When it would tell us to stop to wrap a bale, it would pull in more, because when we're looking at 6 to 7 foot, we would have some issues with that, wrapping those up. But other than that, really not a problem running it through our baler like anything else.
So more of Harley, you said like inch per day that grows?
Yeah, if it gets a shot of rain at the right time, that's what we see happening. And if it's got favorable growing conditions, for sure, it's a fast growing plant.
So 45 days, it would have been a foot or so shorter.
Yes.
And that would have been a lot easier to harvest.
And by the numbers, it would have been a whole lot more, the protein and everything, and probably the stem would have been a lot easier for us to handle as well through our baler, and it would have been a lot nicer.
Okay. Now, you've also fed it a couple of different ways.
We have, yes. We have tried 3 different ways. We have tried unrolling it, basically like we unroll a lot of our hay for some organic matter and let the cattle utilize it. And we've also have a big tub grinder. We've tried it in, or a vertical mixer, and then we now have basically a hay processor that will send it through the last. And anything at this rate right now, we've found with getting that lignin and that stem broken up into a smaller particle size, those cattle seem to really like it and really eat it and lick it up pretty well. and we mix it with a little bit extra feed, to give them some supplement, they seem to really chase that down and really like it, and it works really well.
Now, if it had been a little bit at 4 foot, for example, would they have ate it just straight, just as well?
I honestly believe they would have, because they would not have left the stem behind. They lick every leaf, little leaf that's on the ground, they'll lick that thing up. And I believe that if we get that smaller stem size, that we can cut that lignin down and we can make it a lot more palatable, and they would just eat it like it was no big, like the rest of our hay.
So Logan, when y'all tried to unroll it normally, how did that work?
They do. We get it unrolled, and I mean they leave a lot more stem. As far as that's when we decided we'll try and process it a little farther down. Like you said, they'll eat the leaves and everything right off of it, but they'll leave a little bit more of that stem when it was just unrolled. So that's when we moved to trying the vertical mixer. I don't think our vertical mixer just had enough oomph to get that cut down to the particle size we really wanted. So when we put it in that bale processor, we've got it down to anywhere from 3 to 6 inch long pieces. And that seems to be what's really, really working with those bales.
But now, with 6 foot, 7 foot, it was a little bit hard to roll out.
Yeah.
So if it was 4 foot, you would think you'd a lot better.
I think so.
Yes, I think it would be.
And I would say, to Logan's point about reducing that particle size down to somewhere between 3 and 6 inches. Some years ago, we had access to a bale processor, and we had done something similar where we wet wrapped Sunn Hemp and made a fermented feed, baleage. And we had that bale processor, and we found that if we reduce that particle size down to, about 3 inches is what it amounted to with that machine, there was no problem with them. Like, to use your terminology, they were licking it up, right? So,
but if you didn't have a bale processor, you could roll it out.
Yeah.
And you probably just want to watch it a little bit, not to get too tall.
I firmly believe that with what Dr. Harley was saying, that I believe just the numbers alone, 10 days, it's a big difference in those cattle, and just the palatability of it. I think those cows really can tell. You can tell by looking at the cows and watching them where they eat at.
So now, what if I don't need my winter hay? I'm looking more for summer hay for the slump in June, July, and August. Can this be used for that? And how's our planting dates going on that?
Well, so you said for summer hay or for grazing?
Summer grazing. Yes, for summer grazing.
Yeah. So, I would say most of our research that we've conducted has been on that topic specifically, has been for grazing during the summer slump. We've only in the last few years started cutting and baling for hay just to see, what the best practices might be around that. And it's worked very well for us as a grazing crop. You're looking at, I guess if I was going to describe a system that I think works really well for that effort, it would be, go get your fescue hay cut off of the field probably sometime in May. Follow that up, get the bales off the field, and follow that up with drilling the Sunn Hemp right into the fescue sod, giving it a 45 or so day growing period, and assuming that all the conditions are favorable for that, then you can turn them out on it and start grazing it. And that has worked really well for us in a couple of different research scenarios that we've done.
And then you can pull them off and let it grow back, or
so
you gotta watch that.
If you want regrowth, you're going to definitely need to be in a rotational grazing system where pretty short duration grazing periods, so that they're not just trampling it all and tearing it up. And if you're moving them off of it pretty rapidly, and I say, some of the studies we've conducted, we were moving them as often as every 4 days, and that seemed to work really well for regrowth potential on it. Now, regrowth is going to depend on a lot of things. How late in the season you're grazing it, so what kind of growing degrees you've got, growing degree days you've got. Do you get a shot of rain in the summertime when you're grazing it? Just all those things that obviously promote any plant to grow. Kind of have to fall in your favor to get a good regrowth out of it.
Now, if you wanted to make hay multiple times in the summer, you could also do that earlier planting, couldn't you?
I think so. We haven't gotten to that point yet where we've been able to harvest for hay, have a regrowth period, and then harvest for hay again. We just haven't been able to make that happen, and quite honestly, it just hadn't been a focus. Or if we've thought about getting that done, well, we got the drought, and we can't get in until late, and then we're certainly only getting one cutting. So, ideally, that would be a nice thing to explore.
If you did, you say you want to harvest about 6 inches.
You'd want to leave. I recommend, based on all the work we've done, a 6-inch residue behind if you want to have good regrowth potential.
And that 6 inches is all stem for the most part, isn't it? So you're not really losing a lot.
No, you're not. You're leaving behind the stem that is that lower 6 inches is fairly, I guess what I would describe, fairly woody. Mm-hmm. Most likely, based on our observations, we see the animals don't really touch it anyway if they're out there in a grazing situation. But what you're leaving behind are some axillary buds that are dormant. And once you've topped that plant and take away that apical dominance, I guess, those axillary buds, they break dormancy and go. And you end up with more of a kind of a bushy kind of an architecture in the regrowth.
Now, would that be, for the beef farm folks, is that easier or harder to harvest if it's more of a bush?
I think that would be very beneficial for us. I think that we would see a lot. I like the idea of that, more of that bush type and more surface area and more leaf. Okay.
And probably finer stems too on the branches.
They are. The branches are, they're not as long as that main stem in the early growth, and they're not as large a diameter.
So the quality should be better. That second cut should be very good. Now, is it like some crops, the shorter days will get higher quality, shorter stems and more leaf, or how that physiology of the Sunn Hemp is?
Yeah, I guess that's not something I can answer directly or maybe accurately, but I'd say that, again, I'd go back to the nutritive value data that we have collected that just says, well, those leaves are, the nutritive value of those leaves is stable all the way through, from beginning to end of the growing season. Stems, not so much. And, I think you're going to see that the stems that grow as part of regrowth certainly are going to be better nutritive value than if we just let that plant grow all season long and then harvested it. But the base that they're regrowing from just continues to get poorer and poorer quality as the season goes on, right?
All right. If we let them grow, how tall will it get if we just let it go? Or is that 6 or 7 foot that they witnessed about the because it started flowering by that time, hadn't it? Right. Yeah. And you wasn't going to probably grow a whole lot more.
We've grown some in some research plots where we finished what we gathering the samples that we needed, and we just let it stay out there. We had some that look like 9 foot long canes.
So it could get pretty big. It can. And one of our viewers mentioned, well, can this be used with corn silage? And one of the things that a totally different study is that we were looking at 60-inch-row corn, and can you plant something in between it? So what we did is that in May, when we planted our corn, at the same time we planted the Sunn Hemp, and they grew up together. And by mid-August, early August, we had a nice Sunn Hemp corn mix that probably could be harvested for silage and chopped. And just like you all were saying, they would like it very well and improve the protein content. So on our Sunn Hemp, we got good protein. Are we getting the energy that we also need for our cattle or sheep or whatever?
Well, you're certainly not going to get the energy that you would get if you had it mixed with corn, right? But you certainly gain some energy from that digestible fiber.
Okay.
Fraction
in the stem
in
part.
the stem, yeah. Again, you look back at some of those numbers, pretty highly digestible as far as a stem goes. Right. That's probably a lot. It's probably due to the fact that stem is a hollow stem. It's almost kind of a succulent stem. It's high moisture, it's pretty pliable in the upper portion or the lesser mature part of the stem.
And y'all had no problem getting it to dry down when you cut it. You just had to wait a little while, or
that was the one issue we did at that height. Anyway, was getting it to dry out. Okay. So it took a little longer and a little bit using the rake and certain things turned it over a certain way, and but we did. It took a little longer than our just normal grass hay, but we did get it to dry out, and we're able to bale it. Didn't take too terribly long.
We just rolled it over, basically just turned it over a couple times, and it maintained its leaf really well. Basically, as we washed it, there was not, which was a good thing. Unlike alfalfa, if you turn it over, touch it too much, it falls. This did not, and held a lot of its leaf, even though we turned it over. Now, we were not aggressive with turning it over. We, just easily flipped it over, and it took a little more time, but, we hoped we had a better leaf retention and also get it dried out.
That's great. All right. Well, anything else y'all want to add on your experience with Sunn Hemp or future?
Well, I believe we're going to try it again. We've already looked at some places. We will look at things differently as far as, be a little probably more vigilant, because this is, for Logan and I, this is the first time that we got to work with Sunn Hemp. And so we will be looking at it this year again and putting some fields in production and basically watching our days a little closer than we did last time. And hopefully we get a little more moisture. I think we're not in drought, and hopefully we get a more typical year. But again, it's enough that it didn't scare us away. We're going to try it again and just change our management a little bit of it.
And if you do get where it wet at 45 days, you can't harvest and it grows some more, it's not the end of the world. You still get a lot of good product.
Yeah. And we were able to find out this year, as we've, Logan alluded to, we've tried a few different ways to feed it to cattle. We've kind of figured out a way they like it. So for us, we're not worried about it if we do get moisture and we can't get to it on time.
All right.
We know how we're working with it, and it's working for us.
All right. Thanks. Harley, anything in closing thoughts?
I guess one closing thought I might have is we get a number of comments on the prior video, and we certainly appreciate all of that viewership and participation there. And one of the common things I hear, and there was a comment that alluded to this as well, but one of the common things I hear when I'm talking to producers about it is, the first question, right? What's the seed cost? And sometimes that can be a turnoff at first glance, right? Well, the seed cost, it's upwards of, between $2 and $3, let's just say, per pound. But I would urge people to think a little bit more deeply about the economics of it and look at it from the standpoint of, what is the cost of establishment relative to the forage yield that you get, not just the cost of establishment, right? And so if you start to put it on a dollars per pound of forage or $1 per ton of forage, it starts to make a little bit more sense, and the value, I think, becomes a little more clear at that point.
That you can get in 45 days.
Right.
That's what 55 days.
And during the summer in a drought, right?
Yes.
Those kinds of things.
Yes.
And that's really, that's one of the things that we needed, right? That's what we were challenged with, was we were in a drought situation. What can we get that we might be able to get in the ground and might grow fast and might give us some feed when we know we're going to be short on feed? It's all of those things, right? And so And this is just a tool in the toolbox, right? That's maybe the final, the parting shot. This is just another tool that we're trying to understand and see how it can work for us, and what situations it is the tool to go to, and maybe what situations it's not the tool to go to, right?
And it gives us our versatility of hay or grazing, which is fantastic in a short period of time. All right, well, this is it, and thank you, Harley and Logan and Dale, for joining us today. And keep your questions coming, and we'll keep answering them. We'll talk to you later. Bye.